The afternoon sun was slowly sinking behind the tall buildings, casting a soft orange glow on the busy city street. People rushed past each other, holding coffee cups, talking on their phones, or waiting impatiently for the signal to turn green. Among them walked a young girl named Emily, holding a small paper bag from her favorite bakery. The smell of freshly baked bread and cake still lingered in the air as she stepped out of the shop. It had been a long day at college. Her classes had stretched on longer than expected, and all she wanted was a quiet walk home. Buying a slice of her favorite chocolate cake had become her little ritual, something that helped her feel calm after a stressful day. She had just paid for the cake and was about to take her first bite when something caught her eye. Near the corner of the street, sitting against a cold brick wall, was an older man. His clothes were worn out and his face looked tired. His hands were rough and dusty, and he sat quietly, watching people pass by as if he were invisible. Some people glanced at him but quickly looked away. Others walked around him as if he wasn't there at all. Emily slowed her steps. She didn't know why, but something about the man made her stop. Maybe it was the sadness in his eyes, or maybe the way he sat, not asking for anything, not begging, just silently existing while the world rushed by. She stood there for a moment, holding her bag, and a thought came to her. What if I gave him my cake? It was a small thing, really. Just a piece of chocolate cake. But she remembered what her mother used to tell her when she was little. Kindness doesn't have to be big. Even a small act can mean a lot. So without thinking too much, Emily turned around and walked back into the bakery. She looked at the display counter filled with delicious pastries, bread, and colorful cakes. The lady behind the counter smiled at her in surprise. Back so soon? She asked. Emily smiled shyly. Yes, I just need one more piece of cake, please. The same one. The lady packed it neatly in a small white box and handed it over. Emily paid for it, then walked back outside. Her heart was beating a little faster now. Not because she was nervous, but because she hoped her small gesture might bring a smile to someone's face. When she reached the corner again, the old man was still there, looking down at the ground. She walked up slowly and stood in front of him. He didn't notice her at first, so she softly said, "Hi there." The man looked up, a little startled. His eyes were pale and tired, but kind. Emily smiled gently and held out the box. "I bought this for you. It's chocolate cake. I hope you like it." For a moment, the man just stared at her, almost in disbelief. Then he blinked and said quietly, "For me?" Emily nodded. "Yes, for you." His eyes glistened with tears he quickly tried to hide. You didn't have to do that," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I wanted to," Emily replied softly. "It's fresh, I just bought it. Please have it." The man hesitated, as if unsure whether he should accept it. "Are you sure?" he asked again. "It looks expensive." Emily shook her head. "Don't worry about that. Everyone deserves something sweet once in a while." A faint smile appeared on his face, a small, genuine smile that made Emily's heart warm. He slowly took the box from her hands, still looking at her as if he couldn't believe what had just happened. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You're very kind." Emily nodded, smiling. "It's nothing, really." She turned to leave, but then she heard him call out, "Wait." She stopped and turned back. The man carefully opened the box and looked at the cake. It was small, topped with a swirl of cream and chocolate flakes. Instead of eating it right away, he broke it into 2 equal pieces with his hands. Then, to Emily's surprise, he held out one piece toward her. "Here," he said. "You should have some too." Emily blinked in surprise. "Oh no, that's for you. Please, you have it." He shook his head with a gentle smile. No. You shared something with me and I'd like to share it back. It's only good if it's shared." Emily hesitated for a moment, then smiled. Something about the way he said it, so sincere, so humble, touched her deeply. She sat down on the curb beside him and took the piece he offered. People walking by stared for a second, surprised to see a young woman sitting beside a homeless man, but Emily didn't care. The world kept moving around them, but for that little moment it felt like time had slowed down. They sat quietly, eating the cake together. The man closed his eyes for a second, savoring the taste. "This is the best thing I've had in a long time," he said softly. "Thank you," Emily smiled. "I'm glad you like it." He looked at her with grateful eyes. "You remind me of someone," he said after a pause. "My daughter. She used to bring me sweets when she was little." Emily's heart ached a little hearing that. "Where is she now?" she asked gently. The man looked away, his smile fading just a bit. I don't know, he said quietly. We lost touch a long time ago. Life just went in a different direction. Emily didn't know what to say. She could feel the weight in his voice. Years of struggle, loneliness, and regret hidden behind those few words. They finished their cake in silence. The streetlights flickered on, casting a soft glow around them. Emily noticed that the man, despite everything, carried himself with quiet dignity. He wasn't bitter or angry. He just seemed tired, like someone who had faced too many storms but was still trying to find peace. When she stood up to leave, the man looked up and said, "What's your name?" "Emily," she replied. He nodded slowly. "That's a nice name. I'm David." "It's nice to meet you, David," Emily said with a smile. "Take care of yourself, okay?" "I will," he said. Then after a pause, he added, "Thank you again. You don't know how much this means." Emily smiled one last time before walking away. As she glanced back, she saw him looking down at the empty box with a peaceful expression, like someone who had been reminded that kindness still existed in the world. As she walked home, she couldn't stop thinking about him. She had given him a small piece of cake and something so simple, but it had felt like so much more than that. There was a strange warmth in her heart, a kind of quiet happiness she hadn't felt in a long time. That night, as she lay in bed, Emily realized something. The world was full of people rushing, worrying, and thinking only of themselves. But sometimes all it took to make a difference was to stop for a moment, notice someone, and show them that they mattered. It didn't have to be money or gifts. Sometimes a smile, a few kind words, or even a piece of cake could change someone's day, maybe even their life. Emily closed her eyes with that thought. She didn't know it yet, but that small act of kindness would lead to something much bigger, something that would change not just David's life, but hers too. That day, a simple cake had started a story neither of them would ever forget. That night, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the old man she had met on the street. His kind eyes, his gentle voice, and the way he had shared his cake with her, it all stayed in her mind. She kept replaying that moment over and over again. It wasn't just an act of kindness anymore. It felt like she had witnessed something pure and rare, something the world didn't show often enough. The next day, after her college classes, she found herself walking down the same street again. She didn't plan to. It just happened. Her legs took her there almost automatically, as if a part of her heart was guiding her back to that corner. She looked around, and there he was. The same man sitting quietly near the bakery wall, his head bowed, his hands resting in his lap. But this time something looked a little different. He didn't seem as tired as before. When he noticed her walking toward him, his face lit up with recognition. "You came back," he said softly, smiling. Emily smiled too. "I was passing by," she replied, though deep inside she knew she came there hoping to see him again. He chuckled gently. "I didn't think I'd see you again. Most people don't come back." Emily sat down beside him again, not caring about the stares from strangers. "Well, I guess I'm not most people," she said playfully. He laughed, a soft laugh that made the corners of his eyes wrinkle. "No, you're not. You've got a kind heart. I could tell the moment you stopped for me." Emily shrugged. "It was just a cake." He looked at her seriously and said, "No, it wasn't just a cake. It was a reminder. You know, sometimes when life takes everything from you, you start to believe the world doesn't care. That day you reminded me that maybe I was wrong." Emily didn't know what to say. She could feel her throat tightening. The honesty in his words touched her deeply. "I'm glad I could do something," she finally said. The man nodded. "You did more than you think." For a few moments they sat quietly, watching people walk by. The city was alive, horns honking, laughter echoing from across the street, people rushing in and out of shops. But for Emily and the old man, the noise faded away. It was just the two of them, sitting in their little bubble of peace. After a while, the man looked at her and said, "You know, I wasn't always like this." Emily turned to him. "What do you mean?" He smiled sadly. "I used to have a good life. I was a carpenter, had a small workshop with a few men working for me. I built furniture and tables, chairs, cabinets, you name it. I loved my work." His eyes grew distant as he spoke, like he was looking into another time. "I had a wife too. She used to bring me lunch every day to the shop. She'd tease me for always having sawdust in my hair." He laughed quietly, then his voice softened. "She passed away a few years ago." After that, things started to fall apart. I couldn't focus. I stopped taking orders. The bills piled up. Eventually, I lost the workshop, then my home. Emily listened silently, her heart heavy. He continued, "You never think it could happen to you. You work hard your whole life, and then one thing goes wrong, and suddenly everything slips away. I tried to stay with friends for a while, but I didn't want to be a burden. So I started living on the streets." There was no self-pity in his tone, just quiet acceptance, like a man who had made peace with his story. Emily swallowed hard. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "Don't be. Life happens. You learn to live with what you have." For a moment, Emily didn't know what to say. Then she asked, "Don't you have anyone left?" "Family." He hesitated. "I had a daughter," he said finally. "She was young when her mother passed. We lost touch after I lost everything. I didn't want her to see me like this." There was a long silence. Emily felt a lump in her throat. "Maybe you should try to find her," she said gently. He looked at her, eyes filled with both hope and sadness. "I've thought about it, but what would I say? Hey, your father is living on the streets now." "No, she deserves better than that." Emily shook her head. "I think she'd just be happy to see you again. Sometimes love doesn't care about what you have or where you are." He smiled quietly, as if her words had touched something deep inside him. "You talk like someone who's lived many lives," he said with a little laugh. Emily chuckled. "Maybe I've just seen enough to know people need second chances." The man nodded slowly. Then, after a pause, he reached into his pocket. "I have something for you," he said. Emily frowned in surprise. "For me? But you don't have to—" He raised a hand to stop her. "Just take it, please." He pulled out a small folded piece of paper. It was old and slightly crumpled, but he held it carefully, like it was something precious. "I was keeping this for the right person," he said softly. "I think that person is you." Emily looked confused but took the paper from his hand. "What is it?" she asked. He smiled. "Don't open it yet. Promise me you'll open it when you get home." Emily nodded, a little unsure but touched by the gesture. "Okay, I promise." The man smiled warmly. "Good, and thank you for sitting here with me again. Most people don't stop twice." Emily smiled. "You make it sound like it's a big deal." He looked at her seriously. "It is. You may not realize it, but when people like you show kindness, it gives someone like me a reason to keep going." His words stayed with her long after she said goodbye. As she walked home that evening, the sky had turned pink and gold, and the city lights were starting to twinkle. Emily held the folded note in her hand, feeling its light weight but heavy meaning. She wondered what it said. When she reached her apartment, she placed her bag on the table and sat down. She unfolded the paper slowly. Inside, written in shaky but neat handwriting, were a few simple lines. "Thank you for reminding me that I still matter. Tomorrow I will go to the shelter and ask for help. You gave me back my hope." Emily stared at the words for a long time, her eyes filled with tears she didn't even notice at first. She pressed the note to her chest, feeling overwhelmed. That simple act, a small piece of cake, a few kind words, a shared moment, had given someone the strength to change their life. She realized then that kindness wasn't just about giving. It was about connecting. It was about making someone feel seen, even for a brief moment. The next morning, she walked past the same corner again, but the man wasn't there. His spot was empty. For a second, she worried, until she remembered his note. Maybe he had gone to the shelter, just like he said. She smiled faintly to herself. "Good for you," she whispered under her breath. That night, Emily placed the note in her journal. It was small and wrinkled, but to her it meant everything. It reminded her that even the smallest act of goodness could have a ripple effect, one she might never fully see, but one that could change someone's life forever. And though she didn't know it yet, this wasn't the end of her story with the man she had met on the street. Their paths would cross again, in a way she could never have imagined. But for now, she sat quietly by her window, watching the lights of the city flicker in the distance, and whispered a silent prayer of gratitude for that one moment of kindness that had changed two hearts forever. A few weeks passed since that day when Emily received the letter from the old man. She had kept that little note safely tucked inside her journal. Every time she opened it and read those few shaky words, it filled her heart with quiet happiness. It reminded her that even a small act of kindness could bring light into someone's darkest moments. One afternoon after finishing her classes, she found herself walking down that same street again. The bakery door chimed softly as people came and went, the smell of freshly baked bread filling the air. She looked toward the corner where the old man used to sit, her eyes scanning the spot almost out of habit. But he wasn't there. For a moment she felt a strange emptiness and a little mix of sadness and hope. She wanted to believe he had really gone to the shelter like he said. Maybe he had found a better place to stay, a warm bed, maybe even a fresh start. She hoped that was the case. Still, a small part of her missed seeing him sitting there. There had been something peaceful about their brief friendship. Two strangers connected by a simple cake and an act of kindness. She decided to go into the bakery anyway. While she waited for her order, she kept glancing outside just in case. When she stepped out with her small box of cake, she heard someone calling her name. "Miss," she turned around quickly. A man was walking toward her from across the street. He looked familiar, but for a moment she couldn't place him. His clothes were clean this time, his hair neatly brushed, and he looked much healthier than before. Then she realized who it was, the same man from that day. Her eyes widened in surprise. "It's you," she said, smiling in disbelief. He smiled back, and this time it was a full, bright smile. "Yes, it's me," he said, his voice full of warmth. She couldn't help but notice how different he looked. The sadness that once clouded his face was gone, replaced by a calm and hopeful expression. "I almost didn't recognize you," she said. "You look so different." He chuckled softly. "That's what a shower, a haircut, and a few good meals can do," he said. Emily laughed, her heart swelling with happiness. "So you really went to the shelter?" He nodded proudly. "I did. The next morning after you left, I went straight there. They helped me get cleaned up, gave me food, and even helped me find a small job. I'm helping out at a community center now." Her eyes sparkled. "That's amazing. I'm so happy for you." He looked at her with deep gratitude. "It's all because of you," he said. Emily shook her head. "No, it's because you decided to take that step." He smiled. "Maybe, but I wouldn't have done it without you. You reminded me that I still had something to live for." There was a pause, and then he said softly, "Would you like to sit and talk for a while? There's a little park nearby. I'd love to tell you something." Emily nodded. "Of course." They walked together to the small park a few blocks away. The sun was low in the sky, painting everything with a golden hue. Children played near the swings, couples strolled hand in hand, and an old man was feeding birds near the fountain. They found a bench under a large tree and sat down. The quiet rustling of leaves above them made the moment feel peaceful. After a short silence, the man began speaking. "When you first gave me that cake," he said, "I didn't understand why. People walked past me every day, pretending not to see me. Some threw coins, some whispered things I'd rather forget. But no one ever looked at me, really looked at me, the way you did." Emily listened closely, her eyes gentle. "That night," he continued, "I didn't even eat the rest of the cake. I saved it for the next morning because I wanted to remember that moment, the kindness I felt after so long. It gave me the courage to walk into the shelter. That was the first time in months I felt like a person again, not just someone sitting on the street." Emily felt tears welling up, but she tried to hold them back. "I didn't realize it meant that much," she said softly. He nodded. "It did. You see, when you live on the streets, it's not just food or money you lose, it's your dignity. People stop seeing you as human. You start believing that maybe you don't deserve to be seen. But that day, when you smiled at me, it felt like the world saw me again." His words touched something deep inside Emily. She thought about how many times she had walked past people like him before, too busy, too distracted, or maybe too shy to stop. Now she understood that even a few moments of genuine kindness could mean more than she ever imagined. She looked at him and said, "You know, when I gave you that cake, I didn't expect anything. But you gave something back to me, too." He tilted his head curiously. "What do you mean?" Emily smiled. "You reminded me how powerful kindness can be. Sometimes we think the world is too big for small actions to matter, but you proved they do." He looked at her for a moment, his eyes soft. "You're wise beyond your years, young lady." She laughed lightly. "Maybe it's just that I've met the right people." He laughed too, and the sound was genuine and free. After a while, he reached into his small backpack and pulled out a piece of folded paper again. "I have something else for you," he said. Emily blinked in surprise. "Another note?" He nodded. "Yes, I've been writing things down lately, on my thoughts, my plans. The people at the community center encouraged me to do it. This one's for you." She took it gently, unfolding it carefully. Inside, written in the same familiar handwriting, were these words: "I once thought my life was over, but now I know every ending can be a beginning in disguise. Thank you for being my beginning." Emily couldn't hold back her tears this time. She wiped her eyes and smiled. "That's beautiful," she whispered. He smiled proudly. "I meant every word." They sat together in silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky with shades of pink and orange. There was no awkwardness between them, just quiet understanding. Then Emily asked softly, "Do you ever think about finding your daughter?" He looked thoughtful. "Every day," he said. "In fact, I think I'm ready now. The community center is helping me look for her. They said they can help me send a letter or find her contact information." Emily's eyes widened. "That's wonderful." He nodded, smiling. "I don't know if she'll want to see me, but I'll try. I owe her that much." Emily placed her hand gently on his arm. "She'll be proud of you." "I know she will." He smiled gratefully. "You remind me of her, you know. Kind, full of hope. Maybe that's why I felt I could talk to you that day." Emily smiled shyly. "I'm glad you did." As the evening grew darker, they said their goodbyes. Before leaving, he said, "I'll see you again soon, I hope." "You will," she said with a smile. That night, as Emily walked home, her heart felt light. The world suddenly seemed softer, more alive. She realized how connected people truly were, how one small action could create a chain of goodness that reached far beyond what anyone could see. When she got home, she placed the second note next to the first one in her journal. 2 pieces of paper, 2 moments of kindness. One that started with cake and one that ended with hope. As she sat by her window, she thought about how the universe had a quiet way of bringing people together, strangers whose paths crossed for reasons they might never understand. Sometimes, she realized, kindness doesn't just change one life, it changes 2. And though she didn't know what would happen next, whether she'd see the old man again or not, she knew one thing for sure. She would never stop choosing kindness, no matter how small it seemed. Because one piece of cake had shown her something that books, movies, and words never could, that the smallest act of love could awaken something powerful inside a person, something that could heal, rebuild, and inspire. And somewhere in the city that night, under the same sky, an old man sat on his small bed in the shelter, writing in his notebook, a faint smile on his face. In his heart, he carried gratitude, not just for the cake or the shelter, but for the girl who had stopped, smiled, and seen him when the rest of the world had looked away. He whispered softly to himself, "Kindness really can change everything." Days turned into weeks, and Emily's life moved along its usual rhythm. Classes, part-time work, small errands, and the quiet evenings she spent reflecting by her window. But in the back of her mind, she always thought about the old man she had met on the street. She wondered how he was doing, if he had been able to find his daughter, and whether the spark of hope they had shared was growing stronger. One afternoon, as she returned from college, she noticed a small envelope slipped under her apartment door. Curious, she picked it up. The handwriting looked familiar, shaky yet careful. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it. Inside was a folded note, and as she unfolded it, she recognized the familiar words that had touched her before. But this time the message was longer, more personal. It read, "I have been thinking a lot about life these past weeks. You probably wonder why I keep writing, but it helps me see my own path more clearly. I am trying to reach out to my daughter, but I am afraid. What if she doesn't want to see me? What if I have lost her forever? When I met you, I realized that sometimes we need courage more than anything else. You gave me courage. You reminded me that even when life seems impossible, there is a way forward. I don't know what the future holds, but I promise I will keep trying. Thank you for giving me hope when I had almost given up." Emily's eyes welled up as she read the letter. She held it close to her chest, feeling the weight of the man's words. She could see the fear and hope intertwined in his writing. It made her heart ache, but also swell with pride that she had been a small part of his journey back to life. The next day, she decided to visit the community center he had mentioned. She wanted to know how he was doing. The volunteers welcomed her warmly and led her to a small office where he was waiting. When Emily entered, he looked up and smiled immediately. "Ah, there you are," he said, his eyes lighting up. I was hoping to see you today, Emily smiled back. I wanted to see how you were doing. He leaned back in his chair and sighed with relief. Much better. I have a room here at the shelter, a small job at the center, and the volunteers are helping me reach out to my daughter. It feels like the first time in years that I have a real chance at life. Emily could see it in his eyes, the subtle mix of hope and lingering fear. Have you written to her yet? She asked gently. He nodded slowly. Yes, I found an address through an old friend. I wrote her a letter. I poured everything into it. I explained my mistakes, how I lost everything, and that I hope she can forgive me someday. I'm scared, but I have to try. Emily reached out and placed a hand on his arm. You're brave, she said softly. Not everyone has the courage to do that. He shook his head. I wouldn't have done it without you. Your kindness reminded me that maybe I still deserve a second chance. They sat together quietly for a while. Outside the window, the city hummed with life. Cars rushing by, children playing, people walking in pairs or groups. But inside that small office, it felt like a quiet, safe space where nothing else mattered. Then he leaned forward, a little hesitant. There's something else I want to show you, he said, reaching into his bag. He pulled out an envelope, worn and slightly torn. I found this among my old things. It's something I meant to give her years ago, but never did. I thought I had lost it, but it somehow survived. Emily looked at him curiously. What is it? He handed it to her. It's a letter I wrote to her when she was very young. I wanted to tell her I loved her and that I would always be there. I never sent it. I was too afraid she wouldn't understand. Now maybe it can help me reconnect. Emily carefully took the letter. She could see the trembling handwriting, the way each word seemed to carry a lifetime of love and regret. She felt the raw emotion in it, a father's love that had been hidden behind fear and circumstances. This is beautiful, she said softly. She will feel your love when she reads it. He nodded, his eyes moist. I hope so. I've waited too long. I can't take back the past, but maybe I can still be a part of her life. Emily smiled reassuringly. You're taking the right step now. That matters more than anything else. For the next hour they talked about many things, his past, his hopes, his fears, and the small joys he had discovered at the shelter. He told her about learning new skills at the community center, helping others and feeling useful again. Each word was filled with a quiet gratitude that Emily found deeply touching. Then he paused and looked at her seriously. You know, when you gave me that cake, I didn't just receive food. I received something I had been starving for, human connection, kindness, and a reminder that life can still be meaningful. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. You've grown so much, she said. I'm proud of you. He smiled faintly. I have you to thank for starting this journey. Without your small act, I might still be sitting on that corner thinking life was over. Now I see that even after losing everything, there's still hope. The sun outside was beginning to set, casting a warm glow across the room. Emily glanced at him, noticing how different he looked from the man she had first met. He was still the same gentle soul, but now there was a quiet strength in him, a calm assurance that came from facing his fears and moving forward. He leaned back, sighing contentedly. I think I can finally forgive myself for the past, he said softly. And I hope someday my daughter can forgive me too. But even if she doesn't, I know I've taken the first step. Emily nodded, understanding the depth of his words. Forgiveness starts with yourself. You've already done that by trying. He smiled a little shyly. You make it sound simple, but it wasn't. It took a lot of courage to face everything I had lost. But your kindness reminded me that courage exists, even when we think it's gone. Emily reached out and lightly touched his hand. Sometimes all it takes is one small spark to light the fire. They sat quietly again, the only sounds the distant hum of traffic and the soft rustling of papers in the office. For both of them, it was a moment of calm reflection, a pause in the chaos of the world where hearts could heal. Finally, he looked at her with a hopeful smile. I'm going to send the letter tomorrow. And after that, I don't know. Maybe I can meet her, maybe I can't, but at least I'll have tried. And that's more than I could have done a month ago. Emily smiled warmly. You're taking control of your life again. That's powerful. He laughed softly, the sound carrying a gentle relief. It feels good to feel alive again. I didn't realize how much I missed that feeling. As the evening grew darker, Emily realized she had to leave. I should go, she said reluctantly. He nodded. Thank you for coming today. You've given me more than words can say. Your friendship, your support, it means everything." Emily smiled, feeling a warm glow in her chest. "You've taught me something too," she said softly. "That kindness, even small, can change lives. And that hope can be found even when it feels impossible." He looked at her thoughtfully. "Maybe one day we'll both see how far that little cake went." Emily laughed lightly. "I think it went farther than either of us imagined." They said their goodbyes, promising to meet again soon. As Emily walked home, she reflected on how lives could change with a simple act, a single moment of compassion or a small gesture of care. She felt grateful to have been part of his journey, but also inspired to continue spreading kindness in her own way. That night, she placed the old man's new letter beside the first two in her journal. Each note represented a step forward, a sign of hope and proof that people could heal when they were seen, heard, and cared for. She smiled to herself, knowing that the world was bigger than problems, bigger than pain, and sometimes even a small cake could be the start of something truly extraordinary. And somewhere in the city, the old man sat in his small room at the shelter, holding his old letter close. He felt a quiet peace, a strength he hadn't felt in years. Tomorrow he would send it. Tomorrow he would take another step toward rebuilding the connection he had lost. And he knew deep down that he wasn't alone, that a small act of kindness had given him a reason to hope again. The days after he sent the letter to his daughter were filled with quiet anticipation. Every morning the old man would wake early, carefully making his bed in the small shelter room, tidying his few belongings and sipping tea while he thought about what might come next. Emily often stopped by to check on him, and each visit reminded them both how far he had come. "You seem calmer these days," Emily said one afternoon, settling into a chair across from him. He smiled faintly. "I feel calmer. Sending the letter felt like letting go of a weight I've carried for years. I can't control her reaction, but at least I've tried. That feels freeing." Emily nodded, understanding the mixture of relief and lingering worry. "I'm proud of you. Taking the step to reach out even with fear is incredibly brave." He looked at her, gratitude shining in his eyes. "You know, when you first gave me that cake, I didn't realize how much a small act could change someone's life. I was focused only on surviving, not thinking about the future. But you reminded me that life can still be meaningful." That day set everything in motion. Emily smiled softly. "Sometimes we don't know the impact of our actions until much later. I'm glad it reached you at the right time." The next few days passed slowly but with quiet hope. He spent his mornings at the community center, helping with small tasks, organizing donations, assisting volunteers, and sharing gentle conversations with others who were struggling. It gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. One afternoon, as Emily arrived, she found him sitting quietly on a bench outside, staring at the mailbox across the street. His posture was tense, hands folded tightly in his lap. "You're waiting?" she asked softly. He nodded. "The letter could arrive today or not. I don't know which, but every sound of the mailbox makes my heart race." Emily sat beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "Whatever happens, you've already done the right thing. That counts for more than a letter can ever show." He looked at her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It counts for something. But I can't lie. I hope she'll respond." The afternoon sun cast a golden light over the street, and for a while they simply sat in silence, listening to the hum of life around them. Cars passed, children laughed as they played nearby, and birds chirped softly from the trees. Emily felt a quiet warmth from his presence, knowing that their friendship had become a source of strength for both of them. Finally, a small figure appeared at the mailbox holding a letter. The old man's heart leaped. Emily noticed his sudden alertness. "She's written back," she whispered. His hands shook slightly as he took the envelope, eyes wide with emotion. He opened it carefully, as if each word could shatter or heal him entirely. Emily watched him read, holding her breath. Tears streamed down his face and a trembling smile appeared. She wrote," he said, voice breaking. "She's willing to meet me." Emily's heart lifted. "That's wonderful news. I'm so happy for you." He nodded, trying to steady himself. "I can't believe it. After all these years, she still wants to see me. She still cares." The next days were filled with preparation and nervous anticipation. With Emily's support, he cleaned his clothes, brushed his hair carefully, and practiced what he would say. Each morning, he repeated to himself, "Be honest, be calm, be patient." The day finally arrived. Emily walked him to the small cafe where he was to meet his daughter. He took a deep breath, adjusting his jacket nervously. "I don't know what to expect," he admitted. Emily squeezed his hand gently. "Just be yourself. You've already done the hardest part, reaching out. Now let everything else happen naturally." He nodded, swallowing hard. As he entered the cafe, Emily waited outside, her hands clasped tightly, silently cheering him on. Inside, he spotted a young woman sitting alone at a corner table, her eyes scanning the street. He recognized her instantly. The same eyes, the same gentle features he remembered from long ago. Taking a deep breath, he approached her slowly. "Hello," he said softly. She looked up, and for a moment neither spoke. Then she smiled, a cautious but hopeful smile. "Hi," she replied. They sat across from each other, a small table between them, and for a while words were unnecessary. They simply studied each other, taking in the passage of time, the distance they had lived through, and the emotions that had grown in their absence. Finally he spoke, his voice gentle. "I've missed you. I'm so sorry for everything." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "I know. I've missed you too." They talked for hours, about the years they had lost, the mistakes that had been made, and the hope that still lingered. It wasn't easy. There were tears, quiet pauses, and moments of uncertainty, but there were also smiles, laughter, and a growing warmth that neither had expected to feel again. Emily, watching from a distance, felt a lump in her throat. She couldn't see their conversation clearly, but she could see the genuine relief and connection growing between them. Her heart swelled with quiet joy, knowing that her small act of kindness had been a part of this reunion. Later that evening, the old man returned to the shelter, his face tired but radiant. Emily greeted him with a warm smile. "How did it go?" she asked gently. He sank into a chair, letting out a deep sigh. "Better than I could have imagined. She's willing to give me another chance. We've made plans to see each other again. I don't know where this will go, but it feels right. It feels like a new beginning." Emily's eyes sparkled with tears. "I'm so happy for you, truly." He smiled at her, gratitude and relief shining in his eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you. You reminded me that even in the darkest times there is light. You gave me hope when I had almost given up. You showed me the power of kindness." Emily shook her head, smiling softly. "You found the courage yourself. I only helped you see it." He leaned back, looking thoughtful. "Maybe, but your act of kindness was the spark. It reminded me that life could still be beautiful." The evening passed quietly, and Emily walked home with a feeling of contentment she hadn't felt in a long time. She thought about how fragile yet strong people could be, how the smallest gestures could create ripples that changed lives in ways no one could foresee. Over the next few weeks, the old man continued rebuilding his life. He worked steadily at the community center, reconnecting with people, learning new skills, and slowly regaining confidence. And with each visit from his daughter, their bond grew stronger, healing old wounds and creating a sense of belonging he had thought he had lost forever. Emily remained a constant presence in his life, not as a savior, but as a friend, someone who had shown that compassion could start a chain of transformation. They often laughed together, shared stories, and reflected on how a single act of kindness had grown into something far bigger than either of them had imagined. One afternoon, as they sat in the small park where they had first talked, the old man turned to her and said softly, "You know, I never thought a simple cake could change everything. But it did. It changed my life, my daughter's life, and even yours in ways you might not realize." Emily smiled, feeling a quiet warmth in her chest. "Sometimes the smallest gestures have the biggest impact. You taught me that, just as much as I helped you." He looked out at the city, now glowing under the soft light of the setting sun. "Life is strange," he said. "It can be harsh, unforgiving, and lonely, but it can also surprise you. It can heal you, restore hope, and bring people together. All it takes is a small act, a little courage, and a willingness to care." Emily nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate deeply. She realized that life was full of moments like this, moments that could be gentle, transformative, and profoundly human. As they sat together, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the old man felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He had faced his past, reached out to his daughter, and found friendship and hope along the way. He had learned that even when life seems broken, it could be mended, piece by piece, with patience, courage, and kindness. And somewhere in the quiet of that park, surrounded by the hum of life. Two hearts understood something simple yet powerful, that compassion can create miracles. Hope can awaken even the most forgotten dreams. And one small act, a piece of cake shared on a street corner, can truly change a life forever. Emily smiled at him, knowing that this was just the beginning of many more stories. Stories of connection, resilience, and the quiet magic of human kindness. The old man looked at her and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." Emily reached out and took his hand gently. "No, thank you. You reminded me that hope is always worth believing in." And under the soft glow of the evening sky, they sat together, two lives forever changed, proof that kindness, courage, and human connection can turn even the darkest moments into something beautiful.